Time to check in with Dr. Joe Schwarz. He is host of the Dr. Joe Show here on CJAD, Sundays at 3. He's also director of the McGill Office for Science and Society. So, Joe, when we last spoke, I had asked you if you had watched a documentary on Netflix called Don't Die, which you hadn't. And I said, you asked me what it's about. I said it's about a guy who basically has decided, and he's wealthy, that he is going to do whatever he can and spend whatever he can to basically try and live forever. Now, I understand between then and now, you've watched it. His name is Bryan Johnson. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, well, he's an interesting critter, to be sure. First of all, my impression was that he looks like death warmed over. He doesn't look like he's going to live forever. He's pretty skinny and kind of pale. But anyway, he is an interesting character. He originally was brought up in Utah as a Mormon. And then he became disenchanted with the Mormon faith. And I guess he kind of turned to science. And now he believes that data is the answer to everything. So I can't disagree with that. I just disagree with the way that he interprets the data that is out there. He takes innumerable supplements. It's hard to say exactly how many, but dozens every day, in pill form and liquid form. And he also has a very, very stringent diet. It's essentially a vegetarian diet, and it is very low in calories. I mean, because, he's abiding by the idea that scientifically it has been shown in all kinds of animals that a reduced calorie intake leads to longevity. So he actually gives recipes for the kind of things that he eats. For example, he will eat what he calls a nutty pudding, which is made with macadamia nut milk and ground walnuts and chia seeds and ground flaxseed and cocoa powder and sunflower lecithin and cinnamon and blueberries and raspberries mixed in with 3 cherries. It's very specific. It's 3 cherries, not 2 or 4, but 3 cherries and 2 ounces of pomegranate juice. This is what he would have for a lunchtime meal. And for supper, he'd have an asparagus almond beet salad, beets and asparagus and slivers of almonds and arugula and shallots, balsamic vinegar and Dijon mustard and mustard seeds. So it's not a particularly appealing meal plan, but he has chosen these because he has had his researchers, of which there apparently are 30. He has 30 people working for him. He's very, very rich. And they scrutinize the scientific literature to see what little smidgens of facts that they can come up with that he can then infuse into his lifestyle. And, these range from vitamins and minerals to esoteric vegetable extracts. He also exercises a great deal. And so he claims that he's putting science to use, not only for himself, but he is going to sort of be the model for the rest of society, because he's going to prove that you can cheat death and that everyone else will have learned from his regimen and will do the same thing. Now, he made a lot of money as a tech with a tech company that he sold years ago for millions of dollars. So he's all set for life. He spends about $2 million a year on all of these supplements and on his advisors, etc. So we'll see what happens. I think he spends a great deal of his life worrying about living longer and doing all these things to live longer. And I think that he's probably missing out on some of the pleasure of life. But, at this point, there's nothing that we can say. He seems to be healthy, although he certainly doesn't look healthy. But in any case, even if it does work in increasing his longevity, this is not a regimen that an average person
Sure.
can follow. I mean, they will certainly not be taking dozens of supplements every day and doing all the things that he does. So it's sort of an interesting documentary to watch. But really, I think I come away with the impression that he's somewhat of a nutcase. But he is really trying to put science to use, except that he doesn't really know how to do that. He doesn't know how to separate the wheat from the chaff in all of the scientific studies. And he ends up really putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, and of course, as you just said, Joe, if for someone to even try to follow what he does, if he turns out to be able to live even longer, this is all he does. There's no regular job. This is his job, right?
This is his job, and he says he's dedicated to sort of advancing science and showing that it is possible to cheat death. He, of course, is not the first one to try this. I mean, we can go back to the days of the Bible. When King David was sick, and he asked his physicians what he could do to beat the disease and to live a long time, they had an advice for him. They said, "Go and lie with young women." So that was an interesting kind of advice to give, and apparently he lived, at least by biblical standards, he lived a couple 100 years.
Well, good to know. All right.
Good. That was
whatever
good,
turns
right?
your crank, I guess, right? Okay.
Right. Just one last thing, Aaron, before we leave today. Mel Gibson was a guest on Joe Rogan last week, and they have these 3-hour-long chats. And he talked about all kinds of things, but including cancer. And he said that 4 of his friends, or 3 of his friends, are cancer-free, even though they were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, because they had treated themselves with ivermectin, which is an anti-parasite drug that is used in animals, as well as another anti-parasitic veterinarian drug. And because he's Mel Gibson and his name is known, and of course Joe Rogan has this very popular show, all of a sudden the internet is full of questions and commentary about this magical treatment for cancer, which of course doesn't exist. There have been some laboratory studies, again in cell culture, showing that ivermectin may have some effect on reducing the multiplication of cancer cells, but that's a long, long way away from human treatment. And I don't know how his friends got into that treatment. They did it on their own because it's not something that legitimate oncologists would recommend. But the reason I mention this is to just show the power of a show like Joe Rogan, which is I think the most popular podcast in the world. And if something is said there, then all of a sudden people believe it. So I wonder how many cancer patients now are going to try this regimen, and maybe even at the expense of giving up common proper treatment, because they've heard that Mel Gibson knows all about cancer treatments, and his friends who had stage 4 cancer are free of cancer because they use this animal drug.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up again. When you start taking your advice from the internet, you really have to start thinking twice. So thank you, Joe, for raising that. Joe, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron.
Clear. Thanks, Joe.